That's a tough one. The industry has changed so drastically, so many times. People going back into person-to-person business.
That'd be nice.
I think it's coming. The thing is that if it's not coming, we're all just in big trouble. Okay, so here we are a month later. What happened? We were doing the podcast outside in Tucson, and it was just like endless amounts of noise, and then it got dark.
It got super dark.
And we were having the conversation in the pitch black dark.
Yep.
Outside in the cold.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what were we talking about?
So I would like to get into the history of From the Mines, if that's okay with you.
Oh, okay. Same. Going back.
Yes, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Because
the first question people usually ask me when they meet me is like, how'd you get into this?
Mm-hmm.
And then usually people who are more like entrepreneurs or like business owners will ask me, how did you do this?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So usually like people who are more just like novice will ask that question of like, how'd you get in? And then people who are more like, entrepreneurial mindset, business mindset are like, how'd you do it?
Right. That's why I wanted to do it again, try again for this time. Reason being is because I heard you get asked again yesterday, and I was like, this is a perfect opportunity to do so.
So it's a good topic.
Yeah,
I've done similar things in the past, but like the mechanics of how I think are something that like I've missed talking about. And it's nice because maybe I can just refer people to this video for like, hey, you want to know? Go to the video.
That'd be nice.
Yeah. So I think it makes sense.
So you've been in the crystal business for a long time, but I want to go back to the very beginning, like your very beginning stages. So what inspired you to start this business?
I don't know if I was necessarily like inspired as more as I was just like kind of like gradual progression, I would say. I was doing like energy work and I was super into metaphysics at the time, and crystals just kind of came up onto the plate. And I found like a really high value in crystals. And then I started, bringing crystals into my office and using them as like more of like a decoration. But then I started using them for energetic purposes, which is not something that I really like to talk about because I think it's extremely speculative. And I think every single person needs to develop and cultivate their own relationship with stones, whatever that may look like. But for me, then people started asking me like, hey, I want crystals too. Can you get me crystals? What are the right crystals for me? And I was like, I don't know, just go to the store and look. But people really were insistent on me going to the store for them and doing that. And at the time, I was working on a lot of like affluent people in the energy practice. So people were like, literally tossing money at me just to go do that for them. And I was in the process of really trying to save money to like make a life for myself. Since I was coming from nonprofit, leaving nonprofit, I had no money whatsoever, but I had built a reputation around, doing energy work and doing healing work. So I was lucky to that degree that as soon as I left the nonprofit, I was like, kind of on the move. But it all started from people asking me to go get them crystals.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Right after that, was there a problem that you were trying to solve during that time that allowed you to expand?
At the time when I left the nonprofit world, and I say the nonprofit world because I worked in many different types of nonprofit. Obviously, I was like in the Kabbalah Center for many years. But even while I was in the Kabbalah Center, and even after leaving the Kabbalah Center, I was bouncing in and out of different nonprofits and stuff like that. I really found a lot of value in it. Especially at the time, I was trying to like really go in that direction of like complete spiritual, metaphysical lifestyle. I had no responsibility at the time. I was like on my own. I was still young enough, and I really liked like the idea of like not being attached to anything materialistic. So money wasn't even a thing for me. I mean, it still kind of isn't a thing for me. The way I look at money, I think, is very different than most people that I know look at money. For me, money is just a number. It's not something that for me. It's the best way I can explain it is money is numbers, like literally. I don't really put a tremendous amount of value on having money, and maybe that's why, to some degree, I think I'm good at making money, is because I don't hold the money as the thing that's the value there. So I think that works. But at the time, I was essentially homeless, and through my energy practice, I met a guy, his name is Mark, and I had great experiences with Mark in his energy work. and we became pretty good friends quickly. And at the same time, he knew my situation, and he was like, "Listen, you helped me so much. I want to help you." And we wound up getting an apartment together in Manhattan. We moved in together, and he was working like all day and night. He was in charge of he was a news anchor. I'm not director of a popular news channel. And so he was gone from like 1 o'clock in the afternoon to like 12 o'clock at night, like every single day. So I had the apartment to myself, and I was using that to do my energy work. And then I got a job consulting. Someone asked me if I could help them figure out what was going on in their business. I helped them consulting in their business, and it just so happened to be that their business was they would get a floor in a building in Manhattan and build out little office spaces. And so part of me working for that person is that eventually they just kind of like gave me an office to do my energy work. They knew my deal too, but he's super cool. His name was Kenny, and Kenny was a really, really great guy. Really great guy. And he actually helped me get my first office, and because I couldn't afford an office in Manhattan, So Kenny hooked me up, and I think I was paying like at the time, he was charging me like $800 a month for the office when it was like a $4,000. It was about the size of this room. Actually, it was about the size of this room.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and he was charging me like $800 a month.
That's nice.
Yeah, good guy.
So I want to get into how the first crystals that you carried. Can you tell us the story of how you started with carrying your first material?
I used to, because I lived in the city, I used to love to explore the city, and I loved the train, and I loved getting on the subway and just like going and getting off random places, walking around. And at the time I was self-employed, so whatever downtime I had, usually I didn't start working until like my first session would be at like 11 a.m. But I was like a really early bird at that time, so I'd be up at like 5:30 in the morning every single day. I'd wake up, I'd pray, and then I'd just go out into the streets. And this is also a different time before like Netflix and like all the social media. It was like still back when people were like MySpace was just kind of like a thing at that time. And so I used to go out and I used to explore a lot, and I eventually wound up in a crystal shop, and I just I connected right away with it. I found it to be extremely interesting to me. I had always been like into collecting rocks. Not like crystal rocks, but like I'd go out and I'd find cool rocks on the ground, like I think most kids would do. So I was always interested in rocks. But the first stone I actually got was a Ramada River lingam, Shiva lingam. It's the first stone I ever got.
Nice.
Yeah, and then I started buying like little tumbled stones, but I didn't know anything about any of it, and I was paying like $10 for a tumbled stone in the city. Like this is like going back like 20 years or something like that.
Nice.
Yeah, so I mean, my first rock was a Shiva lingam, and I don't know why, but that's what I wanted. That's what I got, and I think I paid. Now it's crazy now because I sell the same thing right now for like $9 a piece, and I think I paid like $50 for the thing.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Can you describe the moment when you knew this idea had the potential to become a successful business?
Again, still, it was not like it was not done under anything other than I just like kind of was like just gradually and naturally just went in that direction. I started to realize that crystals were so overpriced. Was one of the realizations I came to quickly, and I really started getting into like wanting my own collection. So this really all stems more from me wanting to just have really amazing rocks and be able to afford them, especially at that time when I didn't have like a pot to piss in. So for me at that time, like every rock that I bought, I remember there was a Campo di Cielo like pendant at the crystal shop that I was going to in Manhattan, and it was a tiny little pendant, and like at that time it was like they wanted like $220, and I was on a payment plan, and I was like coming like every couple of weeks and giving like money towards that little I lost it like after a week of having it, which is unfortunate, but I've sold pendants like that for like $15, and I paid $220 for that thing. I remember buying a Chalcedony geode, the white Moroccan Chalcedony geode, like a half of one. It was like that big, and I paid like $250 for it. Again, I'd sell something like that now for like $50. But yeah, that and again, it just kind of naturally went in that direction. Like it was never like I never like strategically sat down and was like I want to do this. I always thought that I was just going to stay doing energy work. I never at once thought that this would, take over my life, the crystal industry. And I never thought that.
How did your background and personal experiences influence the direction of your business?
Well, my business experience was nil. But I was, involved in many nonprofits, and my work ethic was really good. So I had a really great work ethic, and that was going for me. My father is a very successful contractor, and I had worked for him for many years, so I got to watch him, although I don't agree with a lot of his business practices, but I got to watch him do big business for many, many years, and I saw and learned a lot from that. Thankfully, I don't practice the same kind of practices that he practices, which is, a lot of manipulation or like lying or making up things and stuff like that. Again, one thing that's really, really hard, and I learned over time, is that if your job is to be a salesperson, you have to be a salesperson. Mm-hmm. We could talk about that more. What was the question?
How did your background and personal experiences influence the direction of From the Mines?
Again, really kind of didn't. Like, all just went in this direction. Like, I feel like to some degree, like now I'm a lot more reserved about things. I'm a lot more weathered, but back then I was open-eyed. I was like, God and the universe, and that was all I cared about. So I feel like at that time it was more just like the universe was just like putting me in this direction. Not so much because I wanted it, but just because it was what made sense. And thank God, because I listen, I'm weathered at this point. There's no way around it. So, again, my, going through cancer and, having to break my back, like I've risking my life, all the stuff that's gone on over the years, it's just weathered me, and I'm really tired at this point. I could definitely take a nice break at some point. It's just the problem is I don't have anybody to relieve me of the responsibility of the business. So that's where I'm at right now. I know that's not really the question, but that's kind of the answer. Too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about how your experience was down in the mines in Brazil for the amethysts?
So the amethyst mines, that's a long story. But what wound up happening is that from my energy work, to trace it back to some degree, so I was going to this crystal shop in Manhattan, and eventually I realized like you shouldn't be paying $10 for a tumbled stone. And the way that I realized that was I took a trip to Howe Caverns, which is actually is it upstate New York? I think it's Howe Caverns is in upstate New York. And I went to Howe Caverns. And I wanted to go in the cave and see the cave, and they had a crystal shop attached there. Like not even a crystal. Yeah, it was primarily crystals in there. And they had tumbled stones for like 50 cents. And I was like, wait a second, wait, and true story. What I wound up doing was just like going up there like once a month and just buying all my inventory from Howe Caverns. What do they call that? Like the gift shop.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So like I would go up there once a month just to go. I wouldn't even go in the caves. I would just go up there and I would just like, buy my crystals from there. It was a far drive. It was like a 3-hour drive. And that's what I would do. And so I went up there, and then I became really good friends with the girl who was running the gift shop there. And I was seeing her once a month. And I've always been this I've always been that person. Like you're not gonna have an interaction with me that's not an interaction, right? So we became pretty cool. And what she started letting me do was just go in the back room. And just like go through stuff and get what I want, you know what I mean? She was just like, do whatever you want. I saw an invoice from one of their suppliers, traced that back, and again, back then this was so, like you couldn't, to find a supplier back then, it was really hard. Like you couldn't just look it up on the internet and find like wholesalers and suppliers. So I found out who this guy was in the US, and I went to go, and it's just something was wrong with it. Like I just didn't like the vibe of the guy. You know what I mean? And I'm that type of person. Like we weren't a good match, so I didn't buy anything from him. I actually stayed buying stuff from Howe Caverns after that, even though I could have bought it from him, like half the price, less than half the price. I just didn't like buying. I just didn't like interacting with him. Though, I mean, it was only a one-time thing. And so I just kept going to Hell Caverns, and then eventually I was like, you know what, like I can figure this out. And I got myself to a wholesale distributor, long story short, but a wholesale distributor in Brazil. And when I went to go, I got on a plane, put myself on a plane, cheapest ticket I could get, 3 layover flights, it was 36 hours to get there. But if you take like a direct first class like flight, it's like, 12 and a half hours. So I spent, 36 hours getting layovers here and there, which eventually worked out for me because in South America I was going to like every country. So eventually the layovers kind of worked out for me, and I would just space my you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that was working out for me. I made my way to a wholesale distributor, got myself on the plane, made my way down to Brazil, and started trying to find people down there. But eventually, I also realized that most of the people that you're going to run into down there, which is common misconception in the industry, that just because you're getting amethyst from Brazil doesn't mean you're getting a good price. Mm-hmm. Just because you're getting moldavite from the Czech doesn't mean you're getting a good price. Who's getting the best prices or who's offering the best prices are the people closest to the source. So the miners can offer the best price on the material. The person with the mining contract can then offer the next best price on the material. Typically the miners are never ever going to, even to this day, don't sell to the consumer. So even if you're a consumer, you're not anybody who tells you that they're a miner, unless they're in the US, there's plenty of guys in the US mining their own stuff, selling their own stuff. But most of these people, foreign dealers that are like, oh, we are in the mines, we have no, you don't. That's nonsense. The big mining companies down there are big mining companies, and that's all they do. They're not trying to sell to anybody. They're not trying to sell to kids and people with small businesses. And that's what I realized when I got down there. I was like, oh, just because someone's here in Brazil doesn't mean that they have direct links to the mines. You need to get your hands on the mining contract. And in most countries, especially outside of the U.S., there is no formal contract. It's just a spit in the hand and a shake, which means more to those people down there in those kinds of places where there is no Wi-Fi, and even getting someone on the phone is pretty hard. They're using wood stoves still and stuff like that. By their choice, not because they don't have money. These guys have a lot of money, way more money than people think they do. And it's another thing that people think that the miners are these poor miners are getting taken advantage of there. It's not true. The miners are the ones that set the tone. They're the ones that dictate the price, and they want good business. So they're never looking to get underpaid or overpaid. They just want good business. And that's how I am too. I just want good business. I don't want to underpay. I don't want to overpay. I just want the right price. And so I went down there. My first trip, I realized that was the case. All these people who said that what they said, it wasn't true. The process of getting stuff from the mine is there's so many different people involved, from sourcing to the end consumerism. And my plan was okay, I need to get myself to the mines. And eventually I learned that amethyst mines, there was hundreds, I think it was 131 mines active at the time that I was going there. And I just needed one contract, but I wanted to get a contract in a good mine, because not all mines produce the same quality. Some mines are producing great stuff, some mines have big stuff, some mines have small there's a variation to what's coming out of a mine based on the vein that's in the direction of that cave. So it's like a donut, and everyone's, digging into the donut to some degree. And actually got really lucky. It's another long story, but I got in the car with someone I didn't know. They were going to a mine to pick up some stuff. I got there and I wound up becoming friendly with the people there, and I wound up getting a contract.
That's nice.
Yeah. So that's a long story short. But I did think that I was going to get murdered or kidnapped.
Down there?
Yeah. My first trip to the mine, I was 99% sure I was on my way to organ harvesting. I was pretty sure about it. I was really scared.
Thank God that didn't happen.
Well, but it's kind of what it was. If you want to get to those places, you got to take those kinds of risks. That's what I'm saying. Number one, now I would never attempt those things now. Going back and looking at those things that I did, I would never in a million. If I could go back, I wouldn't do it again. I would have just kept doing energy work. even though that was like making me sick. But I would have just stayed in that field. Way less stress. You don't have like the responsibility of all this stuff and people trying to like take advantage of you and manipulate you, and it's exhausting.
Yeah, but you were also going through a lot of physical pain during that time.
Not really. Like when I was young?
No, you told me a story where you were doing so much energy work it was literally causing you.
Oh, it was making me sick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like, even though it was making me sick, I would have just kind of continued doing it.
Mm. What was the biggest challenges you faced in the early days, and how did you overcome them?
Not having a warehouse, not knowing what material was, not knowing pricing for things. I was green and I had no reference. I had no point of reference, and anybody who was in the business at that time who was like a bigger wholesaler or something like that, like the only words they had for you was like, GFY. That was it. They were pretty rough. And I remember there was this one guy in particular. I'm not going to drop his name, but I remember this one guy, and I was like, man, I want to be like that guy. Like when I got into the wholesale side of it, and there was this guy, and I was just so impressed. And I was like, man, I really wanted it. But I was like, but after like a year or two of being in the industry and getting a little bit like more success under my belt, I eventually approached him, and I was like, hey, like I know some stuff, and he was just like, GFY. And I was like, whoa. Because I was thinking like we was gonna have a conversation where now we're peers, you know what I mean? But I get it, especially because I was so young. And all the people who were in the business, they were all old heads, 50 plus years old. And I was young. And what a threat I must have been to those guys at that time. I was also selling stuff for real wholesale, 15% with my markup. These guys were still tripling money on wholesale. They were all triple, so my prices were way better than all of these guys.
Were there any moments when you considered giving up?
Now?
Back then?
No. And I wouldn't even say giving up. I would just say, calling it a day. I wouldn't say giving up. This happened so fast and so natural. It wasn't even I didn't expect any of it. There was never give up. It was here's more for you. So it wasn't I was working my tail off, don't get me wrong. People don't know how hard I worked, the sacrifices that I made. 20-hour days, traveling for 7 days straight in the middle of nowhere, not eating, not sleeping, really crazy, risking my life.
What kept you going during that time? Was it just the momentum of this is the direction that I want to go in now? Was there any thought process behind it? What kept you going? Because it was so natural to you.
The thing is that I was just chasing opportunity at the time. I knew that I wanted to stop doing energy work. That was a goal for me, was to stop doing energy work. I started realizing so much about it, and I just I felt like it was just it's time to move on from it. I genuinely think that God permitting, I think I'll eventually return to that one day. Probably in my 50s.
So funny because I said that to you before and you're like, oh no.
I just might do things very differently. Yeah. I'm more going in the direction of consulting, I think, as opposed to trying to fix someone's problem, because only you can fix your problem.
Right.
And that's something I realized, and that's what kind of drove me out of that industry. Was number one, you're not doing anything. You're only worth whatever the universe lets you be worth there. Mm-hmm. So if the universe wants to use you as a channel for something, it's going to. You don't even have to be a Reiki certified or an energy healer or anything. If the universe wants to use you for something, it's going to put you in that path. And if you're keen enough, you can pick up on that, and you can be a channel. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be certified in anything. But I think I'll eventually return to that one day. I do.
How has your business evolved from its original vision to where it is today?
Again, no original vision really. It just progressively went in the direction that it wanted to go. And it's one thing that I've always like said is that most people who run businesses, they don't understand. Like when people say the owner or the boss or something like that about me, like I don't look at it that way. I don't think I act that way. I think I treat everybody with the amount of respect and integrity that I would imagine being treated with myself. So if you're an employee of mine, the way that I view it, I mean, I'm not saying anyone's going to agree with me, but I don't look at my employees as employees. We all work for the company.
How did you adapt to industry changes? Because the industry has changed a lot.
Oh yeah, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
That's been really tough. The industry has changed so drastically, so many times since I've been in the business. I mean, again, I'm going to say like I first really started engaging the business side of it, like the real business side. I'm not talking about like getting crystals for clients and selling crystals to clients and stuff like that. I'm talking about like actually like, okay, like what's going on here in this industry? I'm going to say that kind of started around like 2011. I think that's kind of like when I really started engaging the business side of it. But up till then, I was like learning what certain stones were. I had certain stones. So I would say that like since 2011 to now, which is like what, like 14 years.
Yeah.
Man, the drastic changes are so crazy. Like when I first started, like and when I first got into wholesale, it was like making phone calls, going to local crystal shops. Hey, I have this stuff. You want to come visit? Because my first warehouse was the size of this room. It was like, I think it was like a 10 by 20 room. It was my first warehouse. And I had to fit like, 15 pallets worth of material in there. Like if you get Thea, who owns the gem lines in Westwood. Yeah. Like Thea was one of my first clients, crazy enough. Like, and before I even started from them, like 2000, like maybe I met Thea in like 2013, 2012, and Thea was like one, and she's still my client to this day. And Thea will tell you, like, she used to come into the where nothing was unpacked, everything was in boxes, just labeled on the box, and you'd have to take out a box and open a box, and it was crazy. You're just stepping over boxes, and but it was all back then. It was all like you got to go and find somebody, and you got to go out and hunt them down and try to sell them stuff. And then gem shows were like back then. Gem shows were really, really popular. So I was doing like gem shows, street fairs, psychic fair, anything, anywhere I could set up, I would do it. And then went into having an actual location, internet, website, marketing. COVID then came, changed everything. Now everything is like internet based, Instagram, social media, TikTok, Facebook.
What core values have guided your business since the beginning?
Business is a weird thing. I always say business and personal, two completely different things. If you're going to be a successful business person, you have to learn how to put everything personal aside. That's number one. So core beliefs, core values, everything like that, you can integrate them into your business model, but business is business, personal is personal. And you have to be able to separate the two of those things. Have to. That's the core value. Separate personal from business. I could go on for a really long time about this topic, but I think just to keep it simple, I think people should understand that the real thing here is separating personal from business.
How has your leadership style evolved as your business has grown?
I don't think it has. I think I'm like the same person that I was when I started. I think I'm just crazier now. I think I've just been driven crazy by the world.
Well, since COVID, you adapted really well during COVID. I would say.
Yeah, I think that COVID was unfortunate for everybody.
Yeah.
But I also think that it was one of the greatest opportunities we had as a society. And I think that for me, I saw it as an opportunity more than I saw it as like bad news. And I remember when COVID happened, and at the time I had $100,000 a month nut. At the time, $100,000 a month nut. That means I had to pay $100,000 a month to keep my business running. And at the time, all the retail shops closed, all the small businesses closed. I had no customers coming in the warehouse, none, zero. And this was for like a 7-8 month run. Everyone closed down. Everyone freaking closed their businesses. Everyone was in their house. News was telling you, if you go out, you're going to get COVID, you're going to die horribly alone in the hospital, you're going to give it to your family, you're going to murder your whole family. And that was the narrative that we were being fed. So people were literally crapping their pants, and for me, it was like, I can't afford, number one, I can't afford to just sit home and wait for this to pass because no one's going to come pay my bills for me. Right. No one was looking to help me either at the time, I called out to certain people like, hey, can you help me out? And they were like, no. And so literally didn't spend a day in my house. I the story. I moved out of my house and I just ran the business with my cousin Danny, who used to work at the company for, Danny was with me for a really long time. And me and Danny, we just, we stayed together in an apartment and we just ran the company and, was going into work every single day. And just like cleaning up, organizing, unpacking, going through material, and video calls. I was doing video calls. Like all of a sudden, video calls were rolling in, and everybody was either like on Etsy or they were doing like internet sales or live streaming or something. And these $500 clients turned into $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 clients like overnight, and that's how the business actually was sustained. And so I saw that everyone was having success in that direction, and at the time I had no social media, I had nothing at all. I still don't like social media, for me, totally honest. But I understood that this is what the future looked like, and so immediately I jumped on social media, and it's a whole other topic of discussion.
Social media is very constantly changing, I would say, every couple of seconds, and you've adapted really well to...
I understand people.
Yeah.
And that's what social media is. Social media is people, and I understand people. And so I'm able to navigate myself pretty well right now through social media. But I do think that, social media and live sales and all this stuff, I don't think we've even hit anywhere near the peak yet. I think probably you're looking at this being the standard for like the next 5 to 6 years.
Yeah.
But I think that around 5 to 6 years from now is where we see the industry completely change again. I think what's going to happen, and I think we're going to start seeing it this year even, is people going back into person-to-person business.
That'd be nice.
I think it's coming. I think the thing is that if it's not coming, we're all just in big trouble. As a society, as a species, we need interpersonal communication. We need interaction. Going in this direction where we're letting AI take over everything for us, and we just want to sit in our houses and order everything on Amazon and have everything spoon-fed to us, Uber Eats. I mean, we're turning into like it's not smart and strategic what we're doing. Species as a species.
Well, it's completely disconnecting the whole human experience. You know what I mean?
We are becoming individuals more than ever. Even in our own families. Scary stuff.
What's one tradition or principle that has remained unchanged since the beginning?
I've always tried to treat the client like I want to be treated.
That's true.
Give the client the service that I would like. That's always been the same.
Looking back, is there anything that you wish that you would have done differently?
There were opportunities that I didn't take advantage of for sure. That I wish I did, but nothing big. I probably wouldn't have done. I did a lot of stupid things, especially with my travel, like trying to get to mines and stuff like that. I did a lot of really stupid things that I would advise against. Like I didn't take my own advice a lot of times. But I did a lot of like really, really stupid, risky things. Really, really risky stuff.
When did you decide to do Tucson in 2019? When did you decide to open up that warehouse out there?
I don't remember what year I opened Tucson actually.
2019.
Was it?
Yeah.
That was the first year I was out there?
Yeah.
I think it was 2018. And I think the first year I actually did I was open for the gem show was 2019. So I was out there in 2000. I think I started actually going out there 2017 was when I really started going out there looking for a warehouse. Because I didn't want, at the time I was selling to a lot of people who were doing gem shows out there. And I really didn't want to step on anybody's toes. So I was like, I need to find a warehouse that's far away from all the gem shows where I can be like away from all of that and just supply the people doing the gem shows. And that was my MO going out there. Because I think it was in 2017, that year, February 2017, where people were out there doing the gem shows, and I was getting those phone calls like, "Hey, I need more material. Hey, I need more material," and I couldn't get to anybody. I mean, I could have been like a jerk and sent people material, and then they get it 2 days before the show's over, and they're screwed with material. But I didn't want to do that, so it was like the right thing to do here is just to set up a warehouse out there and have backstock out there, so people could just show up, grab it, and go, as they need it in the quantity that they need it. And that was my MO for going out there, and that's what I did my first year or two. The reason I don't do gem shows is because I realized after about 2 or 3 years of doing them in the beginning, I realized this is not efficient. This is not strategically efficient. This is not the best way to do things. There's other people who were really smart and have been in the business for 40, 50 years, 60 years, I'm still a new fish compared to a lot of people who are in the industry. But a lot of these guys started their own shows out there. And so like they started their own show, they have the biggest, best booth, and they run the show, and that's really smart. And that's something that I would have probably taken to, but I was late in the game. I wasn't there. My timing was not for that.
Do you remember whenever you decided to go into the distribution side of the industry? Can you tell us about that?
I had more material than I knew what to do with. Like, the thing is when I started taking mining contracts, I didn't know how much material that really was until I understood how much material that really was. And what wound up happening was pretty early on, I wound up with some pretty good corporate accounts. People who were corporate businesses that wanted to get into the crystal industry, and it just luckily, some of them were godsends, quite honestly. They contacted me, and I was a small fish. I had just had too much material, and a lot of it was like low grade material too. So the way that a mine works is once you take everything out of a mine, you get everything from A to D quality, like from low to high quality. So the low quality, even the medium quality, is something that I just never had interest in personally. Like for me, I was like, the lowest quality I want to deal with is like a B grade, like a higher mid-grade quality. So it was a good time for that too, because there was a lot of new wholesalers trying to get into the business, and I was able to offer people cheaper prices than they were able to get overseas because I have the mining contracts. You can't get cheaper prices. There's no one that's going to be able to give you a better price. Nobody. Unless you get to the miners yourself, but I've already done that. So there's no other option. In certain situations, I'm not talking about across the board. I'm talking about, in very specific situations. And so, yeah, I just started selling off all the low to mid-grade material for like dirt cheap to people. And people loved it. Back then, buying cheap, selling cheap was the thing. People loved it. That's also why cheap manufacturing was such a popular thing. And now it's not as much, actually. Thank God. But, cheap manufacturing back then when I started was whoever can save you 5 cents. I don't care how you do it. Save me 5 cents. I never had that practice. Thank God.
What is one thing that you wish that this industry would really do?
The thing is, I don't think people know how big of an industry it actually is. But number one, like the reality of how big the crystal industry is. During COVID, I was saying that the only people surviving right now are people selling food, water, and crystals. And it was kind of a true statement. I think that it's one of those things where the crystal industry for me is very special. It's a very special industry, and it's one that people put a lot of trust into it, and people are easily manipulated in this industry. And it's one of those things where I wish there was just more integrity behind things. And I wish that people put more effort into legwork and researching and cultivating their own understanding of things. Because, people go from student to teacher overnight in this industry. And it's something that I really don't enjoy. It was funny because those clients that I had in today, and they were asking me a bunch of questions, really good questions they were asking me too. And one of the questions that they were asking me about was like about citrine and fake dyed stones and stuff. And I said, for me, I don't have a problem with heated stones or dyed stones. I don't personally I don't see the problem with it. What's the difference between someone dyeing their hair or getting a tattoo or a piercing or painting your nails? It's like you're taking something that's fine the way that it is, but you're altering it because it's creativity. Why why take a tree and turn it into a table? Right? It's because that's what we do. We take organic things, we take resources, and we transform them because we're creative, and that's what we do. And if you're going to be mad at someone for being creative, why is that? Fake stones is a whole other story. I'm not with that. If you're going to sell people fake stones, you're an asshole. But as far as like taking a natural stone like amethyst and turning it into citrine, or dyeing an agate or something like that, or treating something, no, what's the harm? I don't understand the harm or the foul personally. As long as you're being honest about it. If you're selling someone pink agate geodes and you're saying it's natural, then that's another story. But if you're being, hey, these are dyed, this is heated, this is whatever it is, there's no problem with it.
What is one piece of advice you would give someone to enhance their business that they have now? It doesn't matter what it is.
If it's not broken, don't fix it. Man, if you only knew the value of that statement, it's not broken. If you are in a situation that's working for you, when I say working for you, I mean that let's just say you're growing. Even if it's slow growth, even if it's step by step growth, if there's growth happening for your business, do not start making changes. Don't. Just leave it and let it grow. It's like if like for me, I love gardening, right? So you take a tomato seed and you plant it, right? Mm-hmm. And what I see a lot of people will do is they'll plant a seed in a little pot, and before it's time to uproot it and put it in a new pot, they're already doing it.
Right.
You need to allow things to go at their natural progression and not try to involve yourself in the natural progression of things. I know it's a loaded statement and it's hard to understand, but let things just be. And if something's growing, let it grow.